Does the NBA really need to fix tanking? That's a thing we're going to talk about today. And we've heard a couple things over the last, I don't know, week or two that I don't know. I guess that some people aren't happy with the tanking thing in the league currently. Now, we're going to talk about a couple scenarios that have been, kind of rumored that might happen, might be a discussion. The first one that we are going to talk about is what I think is the worst one is getting rid of the draft and letting it be basically free agents, but for these young players, for these rookies, and whoever bids the highest gets them. Why I think this is a terrible idea. The NBA is in a terrible place cap wise for most teams. The only two teams in the entire league that has positive salary cap room, at least according to 2K. Again, I'm doing this from a start today thing, so like the trades or whatever. I'm not doing a 2K video. I might do one later. That's the only reason I have it up. Memphis, Brooklyn. Memphis because they just traded Jaren. Brooklyn because they have 12 rookies on their team. And Charlotte is $12,000 negative. So they're as close as you can be to being positive without actually being it. But if you think that the trade deadline and maybe even the off season, you don't like that because there aren't names being moved. Imagine if you told the uh I don't even know. Imagine if you told the Brooklyn Nets, who have the most cap space in the league currently, and by far, yeah, you know what? We're gonna take away the draft lottery where the balls pick what spot you're in, and you have a chance of rising or falling, and you can pick and you can just offer $30 million to Darren Peterson in this offseason. Why would they as a team ever feel incentivized to take on a bad contract for picks? Because basically what you're saying is picks go away. Picks go away, and especially in the current NBA, picks mean everything. Pick is how we get Jaren traded. Pick is how we get Desmond Bain traded. It's how we get a lot of these players traded because teams don't want to give up the asset because they want to bring in a Desmond Bain to play with Franz Wagner and Paolo. They don't want to be giving up Franz Wagner to get in Desmond Bain. No, they put in picks. So trades would be terrible. Terrible. You would have to match value or just hope that a GM just sees somebody more valuable than what you see them, which doesn't happen a whole ton. Um Unless other than like again the buying low thing, like the Trey Young trade, sure they bought low, they got rid of whatever because Atlanta didn't need them. They thought that they were better off just getting a couple players for him, whatever. That doesn't happen a lot. That almost never happens. Player for player trades do not happen. Now I don't know if this getting rid of maybe it's getting rid of the first round, maybe there'll still be a second round that is picked normally, but that's what I would assume. If you're doing this, you're getting rid of picks altogether, which I just don't think you can do. And second, like I was saying, a lot of teams, like I don't know if I can find a team that did it this season. Um Without wasting too much time. Like, no, but that's not a good example. I don't know if there was really an example at this deadline. Um Yeah, I don't think there was. Mm, the I guess this sort of is it, but not really. Like the Bulls took on Anthony Simons and Colin Sexton, two relatively big contracts, but they are the last year of their deal, which is going to be the one like example that what I'm about to say goes against. Bad teams sometimes will take on like who's someone that has multiple years left on their contract. Bad teams would take like this KCP contract. He's making 21 million this year and then a player option for 21 million next year, which he's going to accept because he is no longer worth anywhere near that. Um sometimes a Brooklyn Nets team would take that contract on if the Grizzlies threw in a first round pick. Now, why would a team ever do that unless they are on an expiring and they are getting rid of, and they want to shed off that money? Again, if you think the trade deadline isn't as great now as it was maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, it's not going to happen because no team is ever going to trade for a contract. If you're telling the Lakers, who are a good team, they're going to be a playoff team or at least play in no lower than, and they're the biggest market in the NBA, they still have a chance that, maybe Darren Peterson wants to come there. Maybe Cam Boozer wants to come there, because what I also assume is that it's going to take away the fact of restricted free agency. Because if you don't know, restricted free agency versus unrestricted, restricted means in real life, like after a player's rookie contract, they go to restricted free agency where teams can offer them, but the team you're on has the final say on if they want to match or offer you a deal. They can't let you go without saying so. I assume if Cam Boozer gets offered $25 million a year for 2 years to Brooklyn, but the Lakers offer him $16 million for 3 years, Cam Boozer has every right to pick where he wants to go, right? Even if it's not more money, which again wouldn't happen until after your rookie extension in most cases, unless again you are one of the players that like a team just doesn't really care and they don't match you in restricted free agency. So that's something else that I just don't really understand how it's going to work if that does happen. Because again, if a team could just say wherever he wants to go, what's stopping OKC from, okay, buy Hartenstein, buy Caruso, and actually, being a good salesperson in Sam Presti or Mark Dayton, the coach, and saying, yo, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, why don't you all just come here? We can win, and we can just create the greatest team of all time because we just signed 2 of the top 4 picks because, hey, we've got good culture. We sold them real well. I think that's a terrible idea. Trades in season would basically no longer happen because nobody would be incentivized to take on like a Zach LaVine or a Sabonis who, there were little, like, the Kings hope someone would trade for them, and the Raptors were maybe interested in Sabonis. No team is ever going to do that unless maybe they are on the last year of their deal and expiring. And then that, again, what's the rule on if, again, maybe the Lakers are a bad thing because they are paying a bunch of people, but like, what's a team that can kind of do this, but not really? But like, again, there's nowhere, or like the Spurs saying, yeah, Cam Boozer, AJ, Nate Ament, Mikal Brown. We just want to sign 4 lottery projected guys. And then we just have it's terrible. I don't think that would help anything. I think teams would just get stuck because unless a player, which some players do 100%, really only care about the money, especially early on, a team like Brooklyn will get some people. But like, Brooklyn is also a relatively big market. But like, what's a team with not like? I know they just made the finals and stuff, and they're still a relatively good team, but say this rule sticks, and this is 5 years down the road where Siakam, maybe Halliburton is gone, or he's older, Zubac is older. A lot of people might not feel incentivized to go to Indiana, even if the money is nice. Like, I just think it's going to get teams stuck even more than what they do now. And I just don't think that's going to help your case. If you don't know, the NBA basically in 2019 changed tanking because originally the worst team in the league got the highest odds to get the first overall pick. Basically, they changed the flatten odds to the 3 worst teams all have a 14% chance, and the literal worst team can't drop below 5 anymore, which I guess maybe has happened before. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that is as good of a change as you're going to get. The second thing that we have seen, and actually before I go to the second thing, the thing I didn't mention about this, like basically auctioning for players, which don't think is a good idea, mainly for the reasons I said and for another obvious reason, but like some of these guys, most of these guys, it has been their dream since they were 4 years old to hear their name, these college players, these overseas players, to hear their name called up on that stage that they're getting drafted. I know the NBA is a business. I know everything like that. They got to make smart moves, and that's what they're thinking about. But the side that people aren't always thinking about is the players. Players want to, if you take away the draft and players don't get to hear their name, they're still going to be ecstatic because they're going to be signed to teams. They're going to be still NBA players. But it's going to be a little bit bittersweet. Now, again, they'll still be fine because they're going to make millions. They're going to be playing the sport they love for a professional career, which very few people get to do. But players want to hear their name. You only get that once. And there's so many players where that is literally like it's life altering, right? Certain players like Cooper Flag, Victor Wembanyama, from the day the draft lottery hit where they turned the balls, they knew they were going number one, right? And that's a thing for a good amount of drafts where people know what the first pick is. Like, I remember when the Spurs got the first pick for the Wemby draft, the next day he was looking for apartments in San Antonio, and they do that weeks before the draft. Like, a lot of these guys don't know where they're going. Some players, a lot of players get called up by their agents or by the front offices who call the agents who tell them whatever that where they're going to be drafted. Sure. But some players still like to just find out over Adam Silver. Like, people like to still hear. People still want to hear from the league. They don't want to do that. And if you're just saying, hey, whoever can bid the highest for me or give me the best offer, maybe years wise, length wise, talking about the situation wise, I don't think that's going to be great. I just don't. The next thing that people have talked about is like basically a tournament for the teams that did not make the playoffs or play in, or maybe it would be counting the play in, I don't know, in the offseason, because to see who would get the first pick. And the reason that this incentivizes teams to not tank and just be god awful is because if you want to get the first pick, you have to have a somewhat decent roster, right? A somewhat decent roster, because you're still going to play for games. Now, like, give me an example. Like, one of the biggest things of this season is what the Utah Jazz are doing this season, where they will sit either Keontae George or Lauri Markkanen for a game. Like, sometimes it'll switch, sometimes it'll be both. But the guys that do play, they'll play, and then the fourth quarter, they don't see the court at all. They just got fined for that or whatever, I believe. There's not a ton of teams that are doing that, but the Jazz are 100% a team that's doing that. But maybe that's not a great situation. Like, what's a team that literally had, like, the Brooklyn Nets, right? They are currently, if this is correct, they are the 13th seed out east. Basically, they're separated by a game to be 15th between Indiana and Washington. If you're telling me Brooklyn, who doesn't have great players, maybe has some of the worst pieces in the league, because, again, a lot of them are rookies or whatever, has to play Milwaukee for a first round pick, or say Brooklyn's got to play up against whoever it is. Like I said, say Brooklyn versus Milwaukee in the final. Whoever wins this game gets the first overall pick. Now, some drafts, this would be really big, but thankfully this draft, we have 3 guys who could all go number 1. But some drafts, there's 1 guy. And if you're telling me Milwaukee, who's a better team, even though they're, right, they have Giannis. And if you're telling Giannis, yeah, you get to play in this 1 game, and it determines if you can get a young superstar next to you. Those teams that are actually bad, like not trying to lose, like actually terrible teams because they don't have pieces or they are super young and inexperienced, they're going to get stuck too. everything all these options that are just tell me that, like, okay, a team like Milwaukee or Atlanta, who it hasn't been great for them this season, you can still try to win games, but hey, if you don't make the play-in from the playoffs, or if you don't make the playoffs from the play-in, don't worry, because since your team, the Atlanta Hawks, are a better team than Chicago, then Milwaukee, then Brooklyn, then Indiana, then Washington this season. If you're telling me Atlanta can play against those teams, or even some of the teams out west, because we don't know how bracket and stuff will work, they're better than the Kings, they're better than the Pelicans, they're better than the Jazz, they're better than the Mavericks, they're better than the Grizzlies at this point, and they're better than the Clippers. Like, those teams that are really bad, like the Brooklyn Nets, they're just never going to get a top pick. And I know the Brooklyn Nets have not really had a first overall pick or like anything like that in a little while, which is why, some of these teams can get stuck because of the lottery jumping and stuff. Like, obviously Dallas getting Cooper Flag, like, I understand why people want change, but these changes I think are just going to get teams stuck even more, and then teams are never going to get better. I just don't think those are the two things we talked about, is this mini tournament, and also a lot of players go through minor surgeries in the off season. This is their recoup time. This is their time to get better, to get ready for their next season. You can't have a sport that goes 12 months of the season, because if you're adding this, like when would you do it? When would you do this tournament for the first overall pick? It's not going to be during the play-in. It's not going to be during the playoffs for sure, because the NBA is going to want people to focus on the playoffs. And then what, after the finals, where those teams are on vacation because they didn't make the play-in or anything, you're telling them, oh yeah, after the finals are done in what, like June, you got to come back and play games in the middle of your off season, where front offices are already trying to think about the draft. They're already trying to think about free agency and what moves they're going to make to get better or worse next season. It's just that it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Teams need that off-season time to get better. A lot of teams go through front office changings, whether it's assistant coaches, trainers, front office. Like, there's adding another tournament type thing after you added the NBA Cup a couple years ago and the play-in like 5 or 6 years ago. You just got to stay with it. Maybe you tweak the odds again, maybe. But again, at this point, I just don't think what any of these ideas are going to actually benefit the bad teams, because these bad teams can't be bad forever. You can't, the Kings or the Wizards can't be bad forever. They're gonna get better, and they need to get better, whether that's getting a first overall pick, whether that's multiple years getting a top 3, top 4 pick. And if you're telling them that they have to play against teams that are relatively established, like the Hawks, they're most likely going to get crushed. And I would assume it would be a one-game thing, but like, the Hawks are going to beat the Wizards, man. Most people are picking the Hawks to beat the Wizards. So I just think, again, if they lose that game, then damn, the Wizards get stuck with the 8th pick. They should be pissed. They should be pissed because, oh, if this tournament wasn't a thing and it just stayed the same, them being 14-39, they're the second worst team in the league. They have a damn good chance of getting the first overall pick. But if you're telling them they play a game, they lose to Atlanta, and Atlanta gets the first overall pick, which might happen because of the Derek Queen trade. But if you're telling them, oh, damn, the Hawks are going to get another first overall pick. They just had Reese Shea 2 years ago, and they have Jalen Johnson. They have Dyson Daniels. They've got, these players. They don't need another first overall pick, man. Washington, Brooklyn, Sacramento, New Orleans, they need that first overall pick. The Atlanta Hawks do not. So those aren't going to work. Those are not going to work. I don't know. I don't really think any of those two ideas are gonna do anything. I don't think they're gonna be good at all for the league. The more I've talked about this like tournament for the first overall pick, the less I like it over the first thing I said, the bidding on player thing. And I hate them both. I hate them both. I think they're both not going to do any good. And do I have the answer to fix it? No. But what I think is going on in the league, I don't think is that bad. The Jazz, sure, they're sitting players in the fourth quarter because their pick is top 8 protected or whatever, right? If not, it goes to Oklahoma City. The OKC is who I think reported them to the league anyway a few weeks ago. But teams are gonna be bad, bro. Teams are bad in every sport. Like it's you can't have everybody be good. It's never gonna happen. Like, let's see. If we go across sports, like in the NHL, there's teams that are bad, bro. There's gonna be teams in every sport. It's just it's not gonna change. Like the MLB, standings, MLB, or well, this was for Mr. County for this season. There are teams that are below 500. The White Sox were a 60-win game out of 162. That's not good, bro. 66 wins for the Nationals. Like every team, every sport is going to have bad teams. The Raiders in football, 3-14. Jets, 3-14. Cardinals, 3-14. Titans, 3-14. There's bad teams in every sport. You're never going to have a good league. And I'm sure they're not saying they want all 30 teams to be competent, but you can't get rid of the draft. You cannot get rid of the draft for just bidding for players. It's just going to be free agency. It's literally going to be free agency. Picks will be useless. Restricted free agents and having your players protected up until they get their rookie extension, pointless. I think it's a terrible idea. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe you guys have ideas. Again, I don't have an idea because I think the flattened odds is as good as you're going to get. And again, I don't think what's going on is terrible. Like the Kings are a god-awful team. They're the worst team in the league. Pelicans, they have sure good pieces that could maybe help in different places like Trey Murphy, like Herb Jones. They're a bad team. The Jazz, they traded for Jaren and whatever, but they're not a good team. They are young. They're bad. Dallas, after trading AD and not having Kyrie, again, they're similar to the Pelicans. They've got pieces where like Gafford, PJ Washington, Max Christie could probably help a team in other places, but together, they're a bad team. I don't know. I don't think these are the right ideas. I think this is the wrong approach, and I think any change like this, it's too big of a change. It's too big of a change. Maybe you tweak the odds again, the percentages. I don't know, but thank you for watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and let me know what you guys think.